welcome everyone to Coffee with a Codex. My name is Dot Porter, and I am a curator here in the Schoenberg Institute for Manuscript Studies, which is in the Kislak Center for Special Collections, Rare Books, and Manuscripts in the University of Pennsylvania Libraries. Once a week, I hop on Zoom with something from our collection. And this is, if you've been here before, you know the drill. If you're new, welcome. It's great to have you here. This is just a 30-minute informal show and tell. And my colleague, Amy Hutchins, is there in the chat. She is our manuscripts cataloging librarian. She'll be watching the chat, and she can answer your questions. I'll also watch the chat and try to answer questions as I go. And we're just going to start walking through this little manuscript and see what happens. So today's manuscript is MS Codex 869, and it is a Franciscan Miscellany that was written in Italy between 1460 and 1510. So it's sort of late 15th, very early 16th century thing. So a miscellany is like a collection of texts that are grouped together. The name miscellany makes it sound like miscellaneous, like they just threw things together, but that's not right. Like there's thought that goes into this. And one thing that's fun to do when you're looking at a miscellany, or that I find fun to do, is to kind of think about why these particular texts were put together like this. The summary description in the record gives a good indication of what we're going to find. It's a collection of treatises, bullae, that is papal bulls, and regulations of Franciscan interest, including works of Saint Augustine, Saint Bonaventure, and Saint Bernard, and bullae of Eugene IV and Nicholas IV, who were both popes. And luckily, we have a full description of the contents. So that's very useful for us. And it makes it something that we can talk about as we go through. I did so this is not my specialty. Those of you who know this or have come to Coffee with the Codex before know that I am often not an expert on the contents of the books that we're looking at. So I am not a Franciscan scholar at all. I can tell you that Saint Francis was the founder of the Franciscan order. And the important thing to know about the Franciscan order is that they were mendicant preachers who didn't own anything. So they weren't living in monasteries like other monks and other monastic orders did. So they didn't have big buildings, they didn't have abbeys, they didn't do that. They walked around and preached to people. And a very important aspect of the Franciscan practice, especially early on when Francis sort of set the order up, is that they were all about poverty. So it was very important that they didn't own anything. And that is important because Saint Francis, he was, I didn't know this. Okay, so he was born around 1181 and he died in 1226, which means he was only around 45 when he died, which now that I'm older than that, that seems young to me. I didn't realize that he was so young when he died. So he died right around the first quarter of the 13th century. Now this manuscript was written in, what did I say, between 1460 and 1510, sort of there. So this is a couple hundred years later. And one of the things that was happening around that time for the Franciscan order is that there had been, I don't have exact dates for this, but there had been a move from the Pope, like from the top, to change the order so that specifically one of the changes, at least, so that Franciscans could own things. And there was a group that broke off, and they called them the spiritual Franciscans, and they said, no, this is not right, this is not what Francis wanted, and they were eventually declared heretics. So that's sort of the context maybe in which we can think about this and the compilation, particularly because one of the first texts in here, we haven't even opened it up. So let's open it up and take a look. Actually, first thing, it's got this great little, this is the binding, right? It's got a flap here. Sometimes we look at Islamic manuscripts on here, and we've seen similar kinds of things. I'm not saying that this is inspired by that at all. A flap is actually a really kind of obvious way to keep your book protected, right? Because it covers up this front edge or the foredge that is often out and can get damaged. And so it's a way to keep it safe, especially when you are carrying this around. And I want you to remember that Franciscans were mendicant. They were traveling, they walked around. So this is small and it's wrapped up, and this is something that someone would have tucked away in a pocket or in a bag, right? So that's why it's like this. Now, it doesn't read from right to left. Yeah, this is the last page. So now I'm going to have to turn this over, and it's a little delicate here. So what I'm gonna do is get a, here we go. There we go. All right. No, I'm saying, Brian, I'm saying it's not right to left. It opens, the flap opens on the back. And so we are in Latin, we are reading left to right. I was just comparing it to one of the Islamic bindings. So Carol asks, is the binding original? Actually, that's a good question. I didn't look at that in the record. What does it say about the binding here? Binding, contemporary calf. So contemporary means that it is certainly from the same time the text was written, but whoever cataloged this is not comfortable saying that it is the original binding here. I'm getting private messages from Anastasia. I don't know if you mean to send me those privately. That person is saying that they think it's original. So I don't know their background. I'm not going to question anyone here. So the manuscript is written on paper, except apparently there are some parchment leaves in here, which we'll see when we get to them. So this is not going to be a fancy manuscript. There's not going to be any gold in here because this is Franciscan, and so this is the context that we're working in. We do, however, have a little bit of red ink, which is nice. So this will look pretty familiar to those of you who've been here before and seen it. So it's written also in very small writing, which I will zoom in so we can get a little bit of a better look. The writing is very small and it's highly abbreviated. So you're going to see a lot of little lines, especially above words. This means that the scribe is trying to save space by not writing out, and this is a very common thing. They're not writing out the whole word, they are abbreviating, but this is really heavily abbreviated. And they're not being very precious about the writing. So this is a book that was written to be used and carried around. So one of the texts, so I don't know if I'm going to say every single text as we go through. Let me find it. Okay, so we're opening with a text on meditations by Saint Augustine, and that says it up here, De Meditatioibus Beate Augustus. There's an abbreviation there. That's Augustus Episcopi, right? Saint Augustine of Hippo, very well known, and that will take us up here to 9. And here we're gonna get some cute things. So keep your eye out for these little hands that are pointing. These are, is my brain gonna absolutely blank at what this is called? Somebody remind me what these little hands are called. Manicule. Thank you, manicule, yes. So we have manicules, and we have, it looks like a little drawing of a church, which is very fun. Someone has asked about the script. It's a informal Gothic, relatively informal Gothic script. So this is the end of the first text. Let me zoom back. And then our next text here is De forma vitae regularis fratrum minorum. So this is the formation, I think it's like the formation of the regular Franciscan minors. So this is like the formation of the order. And this was written, do I have a date? Just after, I think, the time of Francis, pretty soon after his death. I found an email in our records, and I want to read to you about what the author says about this text, because I feel like it sort of helps again with the context. It's by someone named Sylvain Puron. I had doubts at first, and this I'll say this email was written to our former manuscripts curator in 2012. So he had found this text, and he said, I had doubts at first on the authenticity of the manuscript, but the more I read the manuscript, the more I feel confident that this is an authentic and very interesting text. Olavi, who is Petrus Johannes Ogilvy, who wrote this piece, Olavi, is here in this text here giving advice to the young friars entering the order, those friars who would eventually become rebels to the order and the Pope, known as the spiritual Franciscans, which I mentioned earlier. And so right away, the second text here, right after Saint Augustine, is this text which was aimed at these sort of spiritual Franciscans, which makes me think that whoever compiled this, putting this text sort of early in there, is sympathetic to this and what came after. So that's sort of interesting there. So we'll keep going. Another little church up here in the margin. Let's see. And what is something sort of fun happening there? What is that? Is that 15 verso? Yes. So this is Compassio Beatae Mariae. That is the compassion or the sorrows of Saint Mary. This is, I believe, a prayer relating to after Christ was crucified and he comes down off the cross. There's this very famous sort of iconographic illustration of Saint Mary with Jesus, her son, sort of draped across her lap. And I believe that is what this is regarding. So you can think, well, this is another thing that the Franciscans held close, because again, it's quite early in the Pieta. John says, yes, thank you. Brian is asking, why is there so much red? We just have a big rubric here. The rubric sort of being a sort of like a title almost, but they're called rubric because it's written in red, and that's from the Latin word for red, rubric. So that's why they tend to be written in red. YHS is an abbreviation for Jesus, so that's there. And this text is by Bartholomew of Pisa. I feel like I wrote something about that. Bartholomew of Pisa, yes, this is a life of St. Francis. written by this person, Bartholomew of Pisa, in the 14th century. So we are getting texts that are sort of written at different times, so 14th century here. I read a little bit about this life of St. Francis, that it was sort of an earlier one and a little bit ignored later on, because, so the interesting thing about hagiography, which is the study of saints' lives, it's quite different from biography, right? So a modern biography, you think, well, this person is writing this to tell me about the life of whoever they're writing about. And the difference between hagiography and biography is that hagiography is trying to prove that this person is a saint. And often hagiographies tell you more about the person who's writing it than the saint or prospective saint themselves, because of the agenda, right? Like the writer has this agenda that's going on. And so I got the impression from the little bit I read about that Bartholomew was kind of pushing really hard on his agenda, and some people didn't like that. So, yes. Here's another manicule up here. We've got, let's see, some things in the chat. Thank you for, Gazwan has shared a little bit about Bartholomew of Pisa. Not a lot of marginalia, just some scribbles. That's very true. A little bit, and in some kind of shorthand that I can't really read. These that say no, this is like simply like a notation. So someone is coming through and saying there's something important here, there's something important here, and then I think the same with the little X's on the side. Alyssa is adding, hagiographies also often include a set of required elements that provide a frame for the vita or the life of the saint. Yes, thank you for adding that. They do tend to be a little bit like prescribed, I guess, in some ways. And ideally, like sometimes you'll hear people talk about modern biography and be like, they've turned it into a hagiography, and that is a thing that happens. Like if you get to the point where you're just praising someone, and it can also show off your own agenda or the writer's agenda too. More little notes. Oh, someone has, I think this is maybe the scribe made a mistake, and so they just scratched it out and wrote that up. Let's see. Carol is pointing out there are a lot of underlines. There are a lot of underlines. This is someone interacting, well, someone or maybe the scribe, because it's in red. The underlines are all in red that I've seen. So it could actually be the scribe underlining things that they want to pay particular attention to there. Carol is asking about how these were copied, because they would have been copied from other texts. I think usually they would have the books next to each other and be physically like looking at the text and then copying it again. I'm sure dictation sometimes did happen. The reason that I know that some manuscripts were physically copied is because you get a thing that happens which we call eye skip, where sometimes you'll be looking through the text and there will be a word, and then there will be text missing, and then it will sort of pick up later, and if you go and you look at the text that it was copied from or other copies of the text, you'll see that there was that word appeared twice, maybe within a line of each other, and the scribe looked at the word and found the wrong one when he went back to look at the page and started copying from there, which wouldn't happen if someone, I guess it could happen if someone was reading, like maybe the person who was dictating had an eye skip, but it seems, I don't know, it seems less likely. So we're still in this Bartholomew of Pisa. So let's skip along, because this is pretty long, actually. This is 50 or 40 leaves. So, oh, hello. You're looking different. Okay, I love it when this happens. What's this? Oh, there's blank leaves. Oh, this is an adventure. Okay, so here we are. So we get to here, 56. So this is the end of that life. And then we have some blank leaves. This is all paper. And now this is a different scribe. This is a different scribe. I am not a paleographer. I love saying that. I'm not a paleographer. But clearly this is a different scribe. But writing in the same book, in the same quire, there. 66, quotations from Saints Bernard, Augustine, Jerome, etc. So this is just some different quotes here. And I don't know if this is a different scribe or if they just is the same one and they just have some different ink. The ink is getting a little brown. And this is just a couple of leaves here. Okay. And then we're back to this one here. And 68. Mentis. So this is Bonaventure, who I believe was a Franciscan himself, a pretty well-known one. Amy is saying that this is later scribes taking advantage of these blank leaves, which is something that you see. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. That makes more sense. Now, why were the leaves left blank? I think, so if you look down here, there's a word down here at the very, very bottom. And this is a catchword, which is a guide usually for whoever's doing the binding to say, this is the first word on the next page. And so now we know what order to put them in. Now I'm noticing that this catchword doesn't actually match what comes next. It's a different word. So there's something happening here, kind of interesting. But what this means is that whoever when he finished this text, which is in the middle of a quire, where are we? Here we go. He left the rest of the quire blank, the rest of this section blank, and then only picked it up at the beginning of the next one. And we can think about like various reasons why this would happen. I don't know. But it did mean that there were these blank pages. Maybe he thought, I'll come back and finish it up. Or I don't know. But yeah, somebody later has come in and done this. Linda is asking about the messiness here. It is messy here at the end, mostly because of these, like the ink is very blotchy instead of the clean lines, and it looks like a different kind of red ink. I wonder if maybe the original scribe didn't do it and somebody else came in and tried, and they just weren't good at it. I don't know. Something to think about. Okay, and so now we have Bonaventure. I'm laughing because Elisa is trying desperately to write something in the chat and is not having good luck. Brian, aren't scribes trained to know how much space is left? Yes, but this is purposeful. He has purposefully left this blank. Maybe he thought he'd come back later and do that. Okay, St. Bonaventure. And then we have more from Petrum Johannem, who is the same person who wrote that second text that I talked about. And that is, where is that? This is 68, 73. So it's going to be 73 verso. And we're back to this scribe, this pretty neat writing. Let's see, 73 verso. So here's where that text, this next text by Petrus Johannes, there's his name there, starts. And again, this was, I don't know exactly what this text is about, but it is the same person, which again tells us something about that. Okay, next. So this is just a couple of texts, and this happens a lot in these kinds of works. Sometimes you have longer ones, right? So we had that Life of Saint Francis, which was a good 40 leaves, and then this one is just 2, right? This is really just these 2 pages, and then you turn the page, and there's another text that's starting here. So this is Contemplations. So this, rather than being a text by a known person or a church father, this is some prayers, which you would expect to see in a Franciscan book as well. So we have a mixture of different kinds of things. We've got good stuff happening in the chat today. Alyssa, the mismatched catchword makes me wonder if this has been rebound by a contemporary person, maybe to add pages in the middle. Maybe so. Actually, this is one I'd really like to do a structural model for. I do that for our manuscripts. I need to see if we have a structural model, because it would be interesting to see where the blank leaves come in, if maybe something was added. Because the binding is contemporary, it was definitely rebound around the same time it was made. So this is not something that happens when things are rebound like in the 19th century, right? This was not rebound in the 19th century. This was rebound maybe in the 16th century, right? Pretty soon after it was written. Let's see, so we have these prayers. We have, let's see, 77, oh, I skipped that, 77 verso. There's another text that's just on that page, I think. Yep, here we have 77 verso, a text here, and then Hugh of St. Vincent has a text that starts here. So a lot of different people being mentioned. Ooh, something that's kind of fun coming up. Ooh, we have a very nice Deo Gratias here with the red. That's really nice. And 78, no, that's where I was, Hugo. 85 recto, there's a blank page. Here we have 85 recto. This is an unidentified fragment. So we don't know what this is, which is always fun, because it means you have the chance to come in and see if you can figure out what it is. Ooh, look at that. Oh, I like these. I like these initials. Look at those. Those are very nice. The red ones are also nice, but these are good. Carol, I think, is pointing out that some of the pages are paler than others. It could be the paper. It could also be that I think, like these pages, this page, this is just different paper. I'm not sure. This is very different paper. So it could be different paper. It could also be that some pages were used more than others and had more hands on them, which will stain it and do that. I just realized it's 12:31. Yeah, there's some blue. We found the blue. It's 12:31. We're like halfway through. But I'm so interested in the parchment. I want to see if I can find the parchment before we go. So that's toward the end, 142 through, not even at the end. Oh, guys, I should have moved faster. Look at this. Look at this. Brian, it's not lapis. I guarantee that blue is not lapis. Lapis was very, very expensive. But look at this. Wow. So this is not paper. This is, and maybe it's earlier. This is so neat. Guys, I'm so sorry that I didn't move faster. I talk too much. But it's been digitized, so you can go online and see it. And you know what I might even do? I might just do another coffee with the Codex, like a part 2, and do it. Oh, Brian is asking, how else do you get blue without lapis? Any number of ways. There are a lot of ways to make it all kinds of colors. So no, they did. Look at that. I'll do a structural model and we'll look at this again because this is very cool. Thanks, everybody. This was really fun. And thanks for coming. Thanks for all the great comments in the chat. And I hope to see you next week. And yeah, have a good, let me close this up. Have a good week, and I'll see you.